Hello and welcome to From the Be All End, the Burnley podcast. This episode, we're going to be previewing the trip to Millwall this weekend. We're going to be having a look at who the heck's going to play up front in that game, and also pick up on something that we've noticed. We've spotted a couple of people picking this up on social media from the minutes of the latest fan advisory board. That is facial recognition software. So we'll perhaps touch on that as well before we go. But I'm Andrew Greaves, alongside me, Paul Woodhouse and Justin Connolly. Slightly depleted pod squad this week. But it is perhaps quite ironic that we go to Millwall with quite a depleted front line. We're missing our two big strikers up top, Chris Borden and Simon Evans. But Justin, trip to Millwall, Zian Fleming not eligible to play due to being on loan, this kind of weird loan with obligation to buy. Who the hell do we play up front?
It's time for Hutonji to surprise us, isn't he? To show us what he really can do. Well, I mean, we're all a bit sceptical about, having based on what we've seen already. We're all a little bit like, I'm not sure, and also the fact that he's not been featuring that much. That we sort of think Scott Parker maybe hasn't got that much faith in him either. But perfect opportunity to give him a chance, isn't it? I don't know whether J-Rod's the safe option or whether giving Hutonji a bit of a run out to see what he can do, given that that there aren't that many alternatives, is perhaps the right thing to do. And he may well go out there and surprise us.
Yeah, and Woody, sometimes you look for these. I know it's kind of slightly strange, but you look for these kind of opportunities where something goes against kind of what you would usually do, and it looks pretty certain at the minute with Foster out that Fleming is the first choice to play that kind of central striker role. And Hutonji, I think Justin probably being slightly diplomatic there by saying we're unsure. I mean, he looks like he's won a raffle at times, doesn't he? His touch hasn't been great. He doesn't look like a natural championship striker, and that's me being as diplomatic as I can be. But you know what? He had a good international break, and he got 2 goals in 2 games internationally. It sometimes just needs that one little bit of luck, that one little bit of a push, and you might suddenly have a different player on your hands.
Yeah. That's a very fair point. If he gets a chance, puts it away, then, like I say, he's going to be a different player. And it was like during his last championship season, there were all those slight doubts about new players coming in. And I think that was one of the marks of that season, how everybody just managed to slot into place, didn't they? Whoever came in at centre-half, whoever played on either wing, somehow it didn't really make a difference. This season feels slightly different, as you don't really necessarily, if you're going to slot in to that number 9 position, then you're going to be lucky if you get a single chance, let alone getting a chance to miss him. So it's one of those, if we can create, and whether we want, J-Rod or the pace of Hutonji. And
the pace.
Yes. I mean, he's not the slowest. I mean, compared to the two, he's the pacier of the two, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I don't see why not give him a shot. But I did get the slight collie wobbles when he mentioned when Scott Parker mentioned in his presser, we're down to Hutonji and J-Rod. It did feel a little bit threadbare, didn't it, when he mentioned that? So it might be one of those situations, because I know Millwall they've won the last couple, haven't they? And they've been fairly free-flowing and scored quite a few, but conceded a few as well. So maybe we'll get a little bit more space and we can operate on that. And by Sunday, we'll be saying what a world beater Hutonji is.
You make a good point though there. I think that it hasn't really mattered who's played at number 9 up to now, because they've barely got a touch of the ball, have they?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, we have relied kind of, I know the last few, I think pretty much, the last few games have been 0-0 or a 1-0, if you will. But, we have relied on goals from elsewhere, haven't we, Justin? I mean, if you think about striker-wise, Fleming's got one, even though most people will say he's not a number 9. Foster was on a drought. Does it really matter away from home if you have a focal point striker, or is there a chance that you might play somebody out of position? We are used to playing players out of position and almost have a front three which is interchangeable with 3 wingers. Do you think?
Well, there's lots of different ways you can do it, but our main goal threat is Josh Brownhill, isn't he? He's the one who's bagged most often. So I think away from home, you've got to set up to get him, give him the best possible chance to do what he does best, which is, getting into the box late and picking up the scraps and finding the net. If he's our main goal threat, then you've got to try and exploit that the best you can, especially away from home. But I think that's why goals have been really hard to come by, because he's been playing a little bit deeper, hasn't he? Especially when Hannibal's been playing. So we need to get him further forward. But sooner or later we're going to have to find goals elsewhere, and a number of them, because I mean, we're finding it quite difficult to find something to complain about, apart from the fact that we're not scoring enough goals, because this is 9 games in a row now we haven't been beaten, and you've got to ask yourself this question: what would you rather happen on Sunday? Would you rather a sort of aggressive forward pressing game where we get 2 but concede 3, or would we go for another 1-0 victory with Brownhill getting a scabby one from the edge of the box? I know what I prefer. I want it to click sooner rather than later, but I'm quite happy with us limping along, picking up these points. It makes a startling contrast to what we had to go through last season, and I think we need to put it in that context, and also in the context of the fact that it's still a relatively new team. I mean, I know Scott Parker keeps saying that, doesn't he? But it is still true. At some point, we've got to stop using that as an excuse for. I wouldn't say they're even mediocre performances, ineffective performances in a way, aren't they? We don't seem to be exploiting, the riches that we seem to have at our disposal compared to everybody else. But so we need to stop that. But Millwall away, like Scott says, it's a tricky place to go. It's a hard game in that sense, and what so. We take a scruffy win there, I think.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, we've talked about kind of trying to find words to describe performance. I think ineffective is probably a good way of describing it, because they're not. I hear some people coming off the turf go, "Oh, it's rubbish! Oh, dreadful! That dreadful!" And that was after Saturday, which was arguably, I think, the best home performance really in terms of cohesion. Away from home, you'd almost accept 0-0s, wouldn't you? And the odd scabby 1-0 and things like that, as long as you're winning your home games. And just looking at kind of Millwall, it is one of them horrible places to go. It's a place where we have had success. It's a place where we've been on the wrong end of score lines. I guess if you're Scott Parker, you're just kind of thinking any kind of positive result, aren't you? Play with a bit of caution, but know that actually you've probably got the talent to get something more than a point. But you'd be happy, would you, if you were Scott Parker, with another point just to keep the bandwagon rolling on?
Pretty much. And I think Millwall may play into our hands a little bit. They may allow us to play a little bit more on the break. We can sit a little bit deeper and counter, which is what Scott Parker's set us up to do primarily. Mm-hmm. And if if they're kind enough to attack us a little bit more readily than some sides have done, then we may see a more positive result than a mediocre result. But we shall but see.
Yeah, and Justin mentioned that 9 games without a defeat. Yeah, I guess as well, Woody, you could almost argue as well that the Sunderland game is a bit of a not trying to get all Mourinho on it, kind of. You were Mourinho, you say, well, I'm not accepting that as a defeat, so that's another win for us or another draw. I mean, it was at the end of that kind of mad kind of transfer window, horrendous kind of week that we'd had with players refusing to play, apparently, and others kind of making themselves unavailable. That almost sits as a bit of a freak result, doesn't it, given how well we've played defensively, at least, to kind of, we did look a bit of a shambles at Sunderland, all told.
Oh, if you give us a redo at Sunderland, we get a result out of that. Sunderland, aren't all that. They really aren't. And that was slap bang in the middle when all the wheels were falling off. Everybody was in a state of abject panic around the Sunderland time. We didn't know who was coming, who was going, whether we'd have a club, whatever. It was like grand hysteria. I've never known anything quite like it. But you could tell it. You could tell it transmitted from the players, management, the fans. Everything was a state of turmoil for that Sunderland game. And I think any other time during the season, had we played that, we'd have definitely got something. But I remember Atonji starting that game as well. Did he start out left on that?
He did, yeah.
And we still only lost 1-0.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, probably should have been more, but still.
Yeah. And defensively, Justin, I mean, I guess we can just kind of chalk that off as there's no worries defensively in terms of the system seems to be working. I quite like the return to the Connor Roberts tucking in, making it almost a bit more of a packed midfield, having Bashir Humphreys slotting, left back can kind of make that a back three when we're trying to push in things. Midfield, I guess we're pretty all right with, aren't we? I think, if we have the three Joshes in there, we've got a bit of a fairly solid midfield that seems to work well. Do you think the kind of, taking aside whoever's going to play number 9, are the choice of wingers at the minute? And I, grant you that Sarmiento was injured last time out. Benson's missing. We're missing Redmond. Is the Anthony Koleosho kind of pairing on the wings working? Do we need to perhaps switch sides and sacrifice Anthony to get Koleosho on the right side? Or are you looking at kind of, praying that Sarmiento's back at some point in the next game or so?
Well, it'd be nice to have the options, wouldn't it? But I think Woody's right when he says, a counter-attacking game suits those wide players better than a possession-based game. Particularly Koleosho, because he relies very much on his pace. So if anybody who has a go at us this season, I think, and hopefully that might be Millwall on Sunday, will find out how good those wide players are, and I think they are good. But I think Koleosho in particular can punish people with that pace. If we get an opportunity to sit back and play on the break, we've got all the tools that are necessary to score, score goals with those players. I do take the point that, Koleosho is, as I think I said last week, everything good that he's done for us, he's done from that left-hand side. That's where he's built his reputation in that first period in the Premier League. So it's a bit. I'm a bit confounded by this insistence that he plays down the right-hand side to accommodate Anthony on the left-hand side. And I don't see why or it might be a problem just to switch him, even during games, to just see how it goes, see how they get on, see how it works. So I'm quite happy with those two down in the wide positions, but I would like to see them playing a little more on the break, and I would like to see them swap over to try and give those fullbacks a little bit of something different to think about, because they kind of get a bit predictable, doesn't it? You know which way they're going to go. I mean, Koleosho does try to cut in a little bit from that right hand side, but he's always looking to go on his right, isn't he? So I think if we mix it up a little bit, that'll give opposition defences just something a little bit different to think about, and you sow those little seeds of doubt in the defenders' minds about which way a wing is going to go, and you can reap reward from that. So yeah, if they do have a go at us, any team that has a go at us, I think they're going to. I think they'll regret it. But I also think we've got a little bit of enough to break down these teams when we start clicking, and that's got to happen soon, hasn't it?
So, Woody, I know we've just been kind of singing the praises, or at least praying for us to be singing the praises in the debrief for Huntonji. But I just wonder whether this presents an opportunity for Scott Parker to perhaps look to the academy. I mean, and we've got a striker there, Joe Wesley, who appears to be in fine form. The under-21s winning 5-0 at midweek. I think he's quite highly thought of, and he has dipped into the kind of youth team a couple of times, especially at Wolves away, I think, in the cup. Would you be tempted to kind of promote from within, if even if it's just having an option of a striker on the bench, should we need to kind of throw something at Millwall in the last 10-15 or so?
I think, like you say, the option will probably be taken up, won't it? Because we do need an additional body up front, especially if Sarmiento isn't fit. And I know there's all this talk about Trezor being selectable whenever that's going to happen, but that's still a guy who has no game fitness whatsoever. So whoever we place on the bench, whoever we play, really aren't necessarily as match worn as we'd want them to be, because we know we're just not firing. So I think, yes, you probably are going to dip into somebody from the academy, or maybe Trezor, but we'll see what Mr. Parker does.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of kind of happier injury news. Scott Parker revealing that Ekdal and Redmond are both back on the grass. Very low level stuff, I think he says, but they're back with the group. I mean, that's starting to see a bit of a positive, isn't it? I know Ramsey's probably 6-7 weeks ahead of them, and you think he was back on the grass kind of start of September, mid-September. But it just feels like perhaps we're getting a little bit of a rub of the green if we're getting players like Ekdal and Redmond, at least back with the group.
Yeah, I mean, these are players who've got proven quality, haven't they? At this level and even above. I mean, I think that gives us a lot more options. It deepens the squad. It makes life a lot easier for everybody. Though the three that you mentioned there, I expect, if they stay fit, will have an impact in the second half of the season, which is kind of why I'm part of the reason why I'm sort of like beginning to resign myself to the fact that we're going to just be watching 0-0s and 1-0s for the foreseeable future. When those players become properly match fit and get in the squad, we second with what we've got. Imagine what we can do when these players come back. When Ekdal was fantastic for us in this division. I think Aaron Ramsey's shown flashes of being potentially a very, very positive addition to the starting lineup, and we know what Nathan Redmond's capable of. We've seen him do it. So I think I said last week, if we can stay in touch until Christmas, get these players back fit, we're going to have a frightening squad for the second half of the season. So you're right; it's all moving in the right direction as far as that goes. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out. When there's a bit more competition and there's a bit more on the line for the individuals on the pitch. In terms of, at the moment, the team's kind of picking itself a little bit with 2 or 3 exceptions. When these players come back, there's going to be real competition. I think that's going to fire everybody up a little bit, and we might sort of see that on the pitch.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, I know Egan Riley's not really done much wrong and he's growing into the game, but it's quite a mouth-watering prospect to see kind of, or to think about Ekdal and our friend Esteve at centre half. We're not conceding many goals now, if any. You'd almost put your hat on as not conceding with them two in the centre half positions, wouldn't you?
I mean, it's extremely harsh on Egan Riley, purely and simply because I think he's been astonishing, arguably, considering the lack of time he's had over the 2 years.
Agreed.
It's another one of those positions. We seem to be finding these, right-sided centre halves where you're thinking, not too sure, the kind of the O'Shea thing a little bit, and they grow into the position. And Egan Riley seems to be growing into that position, but Ekdal is a different thing, a different proposition altogether. And the way that they can bring the way that he can carry the ball a little bit, it gives you that just a slightly different option. And I think being able to move the ball quicker from the back, being able to run with the ball from the back will, I think, help us move and speed up our pace of play in general, which is what we need. We need a little bit more of that, and we also need somebody in that number 10 to be infinitely more creative and be able to see things and be able to slot that little ball, do things with a little bit of flair, because I think the creativity, the flair has been missing across that front three. There's nothing that can unlock or unpick necessarily, or that we've seen that can do that so far. Maybe Fleming a little bit, but with various players coming back, I think we'll start to see that a little bit more and become less predictable.
Yeah. And Justin, just looking ahead to kind of January and obviously the transfer window, I think, everyone's expecting the recruitment team to be trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat up front. But there's not many positions that we really need to kind of look for. I mean, arguably up front is definitely the one. It's probably the one area that we didn't perhaps tackle, fully in the summer, knowing the fact that we were going into the season with only really Lyle Foster as a kind of, number 9, if you will, that's proven at any level. Notwithstanding Jay, but obviously, we know that Jay was going to be used sparingly. But is there any other positions that you look at and kind of think, you know what, I hope the recruitment department of the, 633 players in each position they're looking at, that you're hoping that they're focusing on a particular position?
Well, apart from, as you say, up front, I mean, I think the most important thing is we get these players off the treatment table and onto the grass and get them into the squad. There are so many players out injured at the moment, players that we know can make a contribution. That I'd really be focused on that. I'm a bit worried about right back. I think when Connor Roberts isn't fit, which he hasn't been for a spell this season, I think we struggle a little bit in that department. Oddly, I think we're all right at left back now. I think that's okay. Central defence, obviously, we're okay. We've got a wealth of options in the centre of the park. We might be a little bit light on wingers. I don't know how long Benson's going to be out for. I don't think many people think Benson is a starting wide player. He's more of an impact player off the bench. So perhaps a little bit in that regard. But let's be honest. If they sell the whole team and buy a completely new one, it wouldn't surprise us, would it?
I mean, I think that's probably for next summer, isn't it? Because I think this seems to be the kind of the way we do things. But I mean, in terms of looking at wingers, I mean, we joked last summer that all we seem to be buying is wingers. We do appear to be a little light in that department, don't we? I mean, aside from the two who are playing at the minute, Anthony and Koleosho, with Sarmiento out injured, Redmond out injured, Benson out injured, Agai kind of, only having, 2 substitute appearances. Mm-hmm. Weirdly, we've gone from having pretty much every winger that's ever played in Belgium and, met Vincent Kompany's in airport to having very little in those areas, haven't we?
Yes. And I think the key is as well that we don't have any wingers that are firing currently. I think we're missing Gudmundsson, definitely.
Yeah, he would be great in this.
Exactly. We're having a field day with him at the minute. But
I think Zaruri's more of a winger for this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was watching the highlights against Reading with Zaruri on the left and Benson on the right, and just watching the positions that they were getting into, their ability to beat a man and come inside and be able to just constantly be creating stuff. We're missing that. It's quite apparent that we're missing those two at the top of their form. I think that's the main difference. It's not that we necessarily got lesser quality, although arguably you could say so. It's the fact that we don't in those wide positions, we're really at top of the form, having an absolute field day, ripping sides apart. So I think that's part and parcel of it as well.
Somebody told me the other day that Nathan Teller might not be all that happy in Germany. I don't know whether that might offer us an opportunity in the.
I'd have him back. Yeah.
Imagine him down the right-hand side in this side.
He's exactly what we're missing.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently, yeah, he's unhappy. He's not playing very much. He's kind of, his substitute appearances are getting kind of shorter and shorter by, each game week by all accounts. So maybe there's an option there. Just before we go, something that somebody had posted, I think it was Turfcast had posted on the on X or Twitter, whatever it is, facial recognition software. Justin, are you happy to have your face recognised at Turf Moor? Or do you reckon, given all the issues we have with ticketing, it's just going to be one big pile of shite that they can't operate properly?
Well, I mean, I imagine Turf Moor's riddled with cameras as it is. It must be, mustn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm in a public place. I don't care who takes my photograph. Good luck to them if they want to do that. Facial recognition. The thing about it is, there are two problems I have with it, really. Notwithstanding the sort of immediate repulsion I have for invasion of privacy and all that sort of stuff, which is obviously a key issue. What problem is it solving? Why has it even become an issue? It seems to me like a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, or at least a solution trying to find a problem. And as you say, Greavesy, given our experience with, ticketing, catering, I mean, they can't even get pies ready for 15 minutes before kickoff. How are they going to run an artificial intelligence-based facial recognition system effectively and have it work? I imagine we'd all just be in a long snaking queue outside Turf Moor, like something from 1984. Trying, please let us in, and the sort of facial recognition thing going. I'm not sure about you, son, but I don't know. I mean, I think. I don't know. The club's not said anything about it, have they? So I would hope and expect them to explain why it's necessary. I can't imagine. I've no idea how many people are barred from entering Turf Moor because they've transgressed the rules or whatever. I can't imagine it's a massive number of people. It can't be, can it?
No.
So and how many of them try and get in to a game when they've been banned? So is it worth the expense? I doubt it. Will they be able to pull it off? Absolutely no chance.
And it was used, I've just been looking, it was used at Spurs versus Arsenal last October 2023, and it resulted in 3 arrests, apparently, there. They had surveillance vans outside the Emirates, by all accounts, the Met Police, but it does feel a bit like a sledgehammer to crack a peanut, doesn't it, really? It's not, it don't feel like it's going to solve a huge issue. We would be the first football club to employ it in a stadium. You just feel a bit of a kind of something that's going to get the fans' backs up for the sake of getting the fans' backs up rather than solving a problem, doesn't it?
It's a very curious, insidious technology. Is kind of biometric face recognition. I once had a client who that was their game, and on the face of it, for want of a better pun, it's, yes, you can see what it's trying to do and what it wants to do, but the sledgehammer to crack a nut, it's like, so if there's somebody in who shouldn't be there, well, are they not able to find out who those people are without facial recognition? The point is, it will naturally go into a database, and you don't necessarily have to have, warrants, etc. And it's not as well looked after judicially as it probably should be. And so I can imagine from Burnley's perspective, you could wind up mapping everybody to their specific seat positions and then understanding, who's borrowed a season ticket for that particular game, etc., because it doesn't match with that particular seat. And the next thing you know, you'll be getting strange little letters through the mail as to why you've been sharing season tickets, and it can just wind up being this really weird, shitty technology that just annoys everybody and just winds up going into a main database for the purposes of police intrusion. So I'm a definite no. on that kind of thing, because it just doesn't serve the purpose of what they will say it should be doing. Yeah.
The thing about sharing season tickets, though, is interesting, because I've seen a lot of people complaining, saying, "Oh, well, there's no way I'll be able to do." But there's you can share your season ticket with people. It's a fairly straightforward process. There are games that I can't get to because I've got stuff on or whatever, and you can pass on your season ticket to somebody else. Obviously, they've got to have a Clarets number, and they've got to be in the database and all that. But Chris regularly goes on my season ticket. That's like a sanctioned way that the club does it. I think the only possible thing I can think of is, I'm pretty sure that you probably can't have an adult sharing a concessionary season ticket. Well, that's fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can get them upgraded, can't you? That's the other thing. You can get it and pay for it. Yeah, get it upgraded for that purpose, can't you? It does feel a bit kind of, a bit 1984, a bit kind of slightly weird. Although I say that, I went to the Spa shop on Padiham Road today, and they also have a poster up that said they may use facial recognition in their CCTV. So, I can't imagine this much hooliganism goes on at that Spa. I mean, it's kind of, fairly run-of-the-mill Spa. But yeah, maybe Big Brother's sat everywhere watching. Maybe it's a way of our friend Bobby Ball tracking mine, Justin, and Chris's
They know where we are.
We're not getting too leery about the drum when they eventually bring it in to raise the atmosphere. But
it'll be that or the drum. That's your choice: facial recognition or a drum.
That's it. Excellent. Let's leave it there, chaps. Thank you very much. Hope whoever's travelling to Millwall on Sunday has a safe trip. I know as ever they've, there's various tube strikes and train strikes and things like that. So hopefully it's not too much of a difficult journey for you once you're in the capital as well. So enjoy the game if you're going. Enjoy the game at home if you're watching from afar. We'll be back on Monday with a debrief, hopefully debriefing a positive result. Until then, enjoy your weekend and up the Clarets.